the advantage with guys like McCaffrey is even on a day where the run game maybe is not effective or it's not used as much or you're playing from behind or whatever the circumstance that eliminates a real heavy dose of the run game, his touches in the pass game are really no different. Those short checkdowns on 1st and 10 and now it's 2nd and 3, that's just a 7-yard handoff. That's a 7-yard off tackle sweep. Like, because you don't have to judge them on just carries, but more so on touches, there's just so many more ways to get them the ball in space. And then to the earlier conversation, his ability to make guys miss and run after the catch is as good as anybody in the league.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman, and let me tell y'all something. There are weekends for getting out and going to the apple orchard, going to the farmer's market, going out to eat with your family and friends. There are weekends for being productive members of society. And this is not one of those. Welcome to week 11 in the NFL, which is about as good as it can possibly get. We've got 3 games this weekend between teams with 7 or more wins. It's the first time since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970 that there are this many games in week 11 between teams with that many wins. It's not just that either. I mean, the marquee games speak for themselves. You got Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Ravens. You got Niners, Seahawks. You got Bears, Packers. You got Philadelphia, Washington tonight on Thursday night. But even more than that, there's so much more to this slate than just the headliners. There are 4 big division games, and there are 7 games between teams that are both in the thick of the playoff hunt. So like I said, the headliners are obvious, but you've got Chargers, Bengals as well. I mentioned Seahawks, 49ers, Falcons, Broncos, 2 teams that are alive and well in the wild card hunt. I mentioned Bears, Packers. It's loaded from beginning to end, and we are going to cover every single bit of it. As per usual, we've got our friend Peter Schrager joining the show to break down the big headliners, namely Chiefs, Bills, another meeting between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. We've also got Greg Olsen coming on the show to preview his game out west, the 49ers hosting the Seattle Seahawks in an NFC West rivalry, the wide open NFC West, by the way. Also going to talk with Ralph Vacchiano of FoxSports.com about Thursday Night Football, a huge test for the Washington Commanders going up to face Philadelphia. Goodness gracious. I can't even process it all. There's so much good football on the schedule for week 11. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's get to our chat with Peter Schrager.
All right, Peter, every week in the NFL is fun, but this is why we do it, right? Like, this is what all the hype is about. A week like this, several huge matchups. I mean, like, what? There's like 3-4 matchups between teams with 6+ wins, all pro quarterbacks going against each other left and right. And the headliner is pretty obvious, but man, I'm excited for it. Chiefs at Bills, which I'm glad I'm talking to you while you're on the set of Good Morning Football today.
Yeah.
Y'all debuted in 2016. So y'all started doing that show before Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen were even an idea in the NFL landscape. What's it been like to kind of watch this matchup become, I think it's not a stretch to say this is the current Colts versus Patriots. Like, if you want to go back to Brady and Manning, what's it been like to watch it develop into this all-consuming rivalry that everybody gets so excited about?
I'd say it's the rivalry of a generation, and what makes it tricky is the Bills have plucked off the Chiefs a bunch in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, the Chiefs always get the last word. So I compared Manning and Brady is a good one. I almost compare it to Jim Kelly and Marino, and I know Jim Kelly never won the rings, but like Jim Kelly and Marino would have these amazing showdowns twice a year, and then they get to the playoffs, and it was the Bills always beating the Dolphins, and it's always like, if you think about the Bills and Dolphins, the Bills obviously had the edge over the Dolphins throughout the 90s, but gosh, Marino was unbelievable during that era also. I don't know if this game is as significant as it might be over the big, 30,000 foot landscape of the season. However, in the moment, there's some really cool stuff. Like the last time two teams had records with this many combined wins going through week 11 playing was that famous Chiefs Rams Monday night game. That was the 54-51 shootout. That's in
2018. Yeah.
so it's been that many years. It's been 6 years since we've gotten a game with teams playing this well at this point in the season, squaring off. And I just love the Mahomes versus Allen rivalry because Burrow's the only one, in addition to Brady, to actually get Mahomes in the playoffs. And Allen's had so many whacks and hasn't been able to. This helps him get another shot. If they can get another home playoff game, it obviously gives them a huge advantage than having to go into Arrowhead.
You touched on it a minute ago, and I wanted to talk about it because you see this idea floating around. And look, I don't need to be the millionth person to say it, right? Like the Bills have won 3 straight in the regular season. Everybody knows the Bills can beat the Chiefs in the regular season. It's going to be about whether they can get past them in the playoffs or whether they can get over the hump. But like this game still should matter a lot, right? Like we just don't get very many opportunities to see these types of matchups. Like I don't think it's fair to just diminish this and say like, whatever, we'll see you in January. And like I know that's what Chiefs fans are going to say. I know that the Bills do have to prove that eventually, but I mean, this is still such a fantastic series, and the Bills at least have a shot at the number 1 seed if they manage to win this game. Like, I don't like the idea of trying to take air out of this because we just don't get very many opportunities at this.
Look, and it's fun because I think it's a little bit of a surprise in that we thought that the window might have been closing on Buffalo this offseason. They let Stephon Diggs walk. They, of course, let Gabe Davis walk. Matt Milano got injured early in the season. I was like, all right, so the Jets and the Dolphins are going to be really worthy competitors in this AFC East that has been dominated by Buffalo since Brady left, and it's not the case. Like this has been a really cool season for Buffalo. Their defense is outstanding and they take care of their business.
This is as good as it gets in the regular season, and it's crazy to think both of these teams can be better than they already were. It doesn't. He's not going to play in this game, but like Matt Milano working his way back into the lineup for Buffalo.
Coleman will be back. Yep.
And then Kansas City, look, I think they were your Super Bowl pick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were my Super Bowl pick as well, but wouldn't you have expected them to have lost 2 or 3 at this point, especially once they started accumulating injuries the way they did? And now I'm sitting here seeing Juju Smith-Schuster could be back for this game. If Isaiah Pacheco's not back for this game, he will be soon. Like the Chiefs are getting reinforcements to a team that hasn't needed them yet, which is terrifying.
Yeah, and the Chiefs are winning in these crazy ways. I think Jamie Erdahl, my co-host on Good Morning Football, said it. Of all the game winning field goal attempts in NFL history, there's never been one blocked by 35 yards or less in the final seconds of a game. And it, of course, happens with the Chiefs. You almost think this thing is rigged. It's not. Sometimes you put yourself in positions to win, and the Broncos, they had so many shots to just say, you know what, let's put this game away. Let's try to go for a touchdown. They were so conservative and like, we're just going to set up for the field goal, we'll walk out of here, walk out. And of course, you leave it up to the opportunity to get it blocked. Chiefs have not been pretty, but it's actually been a really cool version of the Kansas City Chiefs to watch. They find a way no matter what. And when it comes to Mahomes, there's no other quarterback you'd want with the ball in his hands in the final minutes.
We're not apologizing for wins, but do you think the Chiefs, like in their hearts of hearts, expected to be here? Like 9-0 is what I mean. Like 9-0, 15-game winning streak going back to last year. I mean, even by Chiefs standards, that seems to exceed expectations.
Yeah, and it's like, you look at the Chargers, right? And it's like Justin Herbert hasn't thrown an interception in 7 games, and their defense has been outstanding. Like Mahomes throws interceptions. Like Carson Steele fumbles the ball. They make mistakes, and yet they still find a way to come out on top. It goes to the age-old like debate, and I remember covering the Colts. I want to say it was like 2010, I don't know what it was, but they were like 14-0, and it was like, do you keep on trying to be undefeated and playing Peyton Manning, or do you take him out and not risk injury? Like, we're not at that point yet about the injury, and they haven't clinched anything, but is it almost better just to get the loss out of the way at some point? And if it is a loss, would you rather it be to these guys, or would you rather lose to like a Raiders or a Chargers? Like, just get it out of the way in the division. You know you're going to win the division anyway. Like, it's one of those. So the pressure's going to build, but they certainly don't feel like the '07 Patriots, and they certainly don't feel like the '72 Dolphins when you watch them.
I've never seen such a dominant team that gets it by such the skin of their teeth. But oh man, I can't wait for that one. Stat to watch for me: Bills are plus 13 in turnover margin. It's the best in the league. They only have 6 giveaways on the year. The Chiefs have twice as many. Now, go figure, the Bills are going to be the ones that struggle with ball security in this game, but I think that's something worth watching. Peter, in the early window, it speaks to the power of Bills Chiefs that we are getting the best version of Ravens Steelers that we've seen in probably 5 years. And it's down the list in this week. That's how good this week is. But what is your storyline of choice in this one? Because it does have a lot.
Yeah, I love this one because of like the Russell Wilson emergence. But here's what's interesting. The Steelers haven't played a game in the division yet. Now, last year they went 5-1 in the AFC North, so it's not like they can't win in the division. But as much as we're doing this victory parade, like if they start losing to their divisional opponents, they might not even make the playoffs. So to me, this is a real challenge, and it's their first big divisional game. They've got 5 of their next 6 games are in the AFC North. That's wild. Like the way the schedule makers did this. So obviously it's going to be Baltimore. It's going to be Pittsburgh. It's going to be what it is. It's going to be a 16-13 game like it is every other year, or it's going to be 20-17. You know, it's going to come down to the final play, and a defensive play is going to be made by somebody. But I do want to see how Pittsburgh handles a divisional opponent, especially the Ravens, who are coming off that wild divisional win on Thursday night. And they're doing so in their building. Like, this is in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh should win this game. If they are what we think they are, and we're talking about them this way, they should win this game. And when it's these two teams, it's going to be a 1-score game. It'll come down to the final possession. We'll see.
I was surprised to see this when I started digging into this game. This is only the 5th time Lamar Jackson has started against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's been injured a lot. Like Snoop Huntley's played a few of these games. And we were going through it last week when they played Cincinnati. Like Lamar and Burrow have had injury history too. So like they haven't squared off that many times. They've played a few times, but the last time I remember, I'm sure there's been a game in between, but Russell and Lamar played. I showed the clip yesterday on Good Morning Football. 2019, Lamar's MVP season, late October, early November. It was in Seattle, and it was one of the first times that like Lamar looked at Harbaugh and was like, "Let's go for it on 4th down." And he let Lamar go for it, and he converted a touchdown, and it kind of set him on his way for that MVP season. Cool though, right? Like Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson in 2024 in a game that really matters. Steelers Ravens. I love this stuff.
It's I hate to say it's been underwhelming because it's always worth watching. It's one of the best rivalries in the league. But like I said, I mean, the last time it was this juicy was probably 2020. Pittsburgh was 6-0. Baltimore was 5-1. Like it's been a little lackluster because Pittsburgh's been sort of this 500 type of team, and Lamar Jackson missed a chunk of 2 seasons due to injury. This is as good as it's felt since like Big Ben was still, in Pittsburgh. It's really exciting to see this get back to its full potential.
No doubt. And they haven't played many great teams, but if you told them before the season they were gonna, have to play the Jets and the Cowboys, and like they can't control who they play. The Steelers can't control who's on the other side of the ball. All they can do is win their games, and over the next 6 weeks, they've got some divisional opponents who would love to pluck them off.
Which revenge factor excites you more? Patrick Queen potentially having to deal with Lamar Jackson, or Deontay Johnson, which wasn't all that spicy because he's only caught 2 passes as a Raven, but it got spicy this week when Mike Tomlin was basically like, I don't have any tape on this guy. Like, I don't care about him. I got bigger fish to fry.
Unbelievable. Tomlin, who's such a master of his words and so measured, and even came out and said, before you even compare Jayden Daniels to Lamar Jackson, slow down. Lamar Jackson's a 2-time MVP. So he's given out his flowers to the Ravens, just to his old 100 reception receiver. He doesn't. So I'm going to go with the Deontay Johnson thing. And if I know Harbaugh at all and Todd Monken, they'll try to get him involved and try to get him a big play when it matters. Although Mike Williams shows up in his first game as a Steeler and has the biggest catch of the game. So there's all sorts of big personalities and new acquisitions involved in this one.
Baltimore has allowed 17 more explosive passes than the next worst secondary in the league. So There's gonna be some chunk plays in this game. All right, you mentioned the Steelers not opening division play until week 11. There is another team that had until week 11
Ooh,
to open division play. The Chicago Bears, by
interesting.
far the latest they have ever opened division play in that very long history. They get the Packers at home. Still an incredibly juicy game. It's Packers Bears. It's Caleb and Jordan Love. But man, what the hell happened over the last 2 weeks that we're here where we're firing Shane Waldron, we're debating about Matt Eberflus's future and how much longer that's going to last. The vibes were so good as recently as like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that Hail Mary. Things are going all right after Caleb led his team with 20 seconds left for what looked like a game-winning touchdown. And then it's been absolute crud since. Look, I said this uh, earlier when this went down and Shane Waldron got fired. You have to lie in the bed, right? So they hire an offensive coordinator and they go through the process. And maybe I'm a Cliff Kingsbury fanboy, or it's because I've got a relationship with him from when he was at Texas Tech in Arizona. But you bring in all these different candidates for the offensive coordinator job, and then you fly out and you sit with Kingsbury in January for several hours. The guy's putting on a suit and sitting with you after he had just spent a great college football season with Caleb Williams, knowing him. And you look at him across the table and you say, we're good. Even though he wanted to be the offensive coordinator in Chicago and would have loved to have worked with Caleb, said, we're good. We're going with Shane Waldron, who was with Seattle, who hasn't been in the playoffs in 2 years. We're going with Shane Waldron as our OC. And then 10 weeks in, you're going to fire it. And then now you got to pay out Shane Waldron and you got to say, well, okay, no, we're going to now give the handoff of the offense to former running backs coach and tight ends coach, Thomas Brown. And he's going to salvage, like, that's a bad hire then. If you don't believe in your conviction and you don't believe that Shane Waldron is going to be your guy through thick and thin, then you really messed up in January, especially when Kingsbury is dominating with Jayden Daniels and you had the opportunity to hire him because he was with Caleb. I look at that stuff, and my big takeaway of the whole thing is, as much as we talk about head coaches and all that stuff, when you have a young quarterback, the offensive coordinator and the offense you build around him is so paramount. It's huge. And that seems to have been a misfire by the Chicago Bears. And whether it was Kingsbury or somebody else, what an indictment on the coaching staff and the front office on hiring a coordinator and firing him 10 weeks in to a rookie's first 10 games of his career. What a shame.
I've said this a couple times this week, but I think it bears repeating. Wow, I didn't even do that pun on purpose. Sorry. But
That's good.
it's it's crazy to me that this was so easy to see coming. And I don't enjoy talking about Matt Eberflus this way, but this is why it was so weird to keep him in the first place. Like, you had a chance to start this whole thing over from scratch and have everybody on the same clock. Rookie quarterback, first year head coach. There's not going to be any pressure on him in year one. Same thing goes for his coaching staff. And instead, you keep him, and he's feeling the pressure to win because he's several years into this, well below 500. And you don't even make it into the holiday season before now we're completely in turmoil. And people like you and me see the writing on the wall. Peter, he's fired 8 coaches in the last 14 months. What are the odds that he digs out of this enough to where he keeps his job? And what are the odds that Caleb Williams is not starting every single thing about his career over from scratch in January?
Not great. Like, not great. The Bears take this great pride, I think, in not firing coaches mid-season. But now you have what feels to be a lame duck coach. And Matt's a great defensive coach, and he was really good at Notre Dame, and he was really good with the Colts, and he's a good coach. This isn't the but whereas the Jets pulled the plug on Robert Saleh 5 weeks in, the Bears are like holding the fort on this, and out of pride or out of whatever, they think they could still salvage this thing. You said it to start this 3 weeks ago. The Bears were 4-2, or 4 weeks ago, and they were feeling good and they were in the playoff mix. Right now, it feels like they're one of the worst teams in football. That loss to the Patriots, you could have made the argument that any of those coaches, maybe the entire coaching staff, deserve to lose their jobs the way that team came out and played. Eberflus hangs on, but does that feel like a great vote of confidence? No. Let's see if he can salvage it with a Packers win this week.
I'm still holding out hope for the Bears. Like, we didn't imagine that. Like, Caleb was on a 3 or 4 week tear of playing really good football. Like, it happened on television. We all saw it. And to lose it so dramatically. Maybe Thomas Brown can dig something out of
Maybe.
there. I'm excited to see him get the shot after what happened with Carolina last year, but
Yes. Look, McVay and I are tight. McVay loves Thomas Brown and loved him so much that when he was a running backs coach, was like,
came over from the Rams, right? Yeah.
yeah, he's not gonna get a OC job as a running backs coach only. He needs to now coach other positions. So he moved him to tight ends coach so he can get another position. Let him, have a bigger role. I think he was an assistant head coach to McVay at one point. So like, he's really well respected by people who know football. I just don't know, being thrown into the mix in week 11 is the best chance for you to really succeed.
It's got to be disheartening if you're a Bears fan where, again, this is their first division game, their opening division play against the Packers, and this was seen as like a chance to show that they were in a new era. And it feels very much the same as what we've gotten so used to, where the Packers feel like heavy favorites, the most stable organization in the league, going against one of the most dysfunctional organizations in the league. Like, what else is new?
Yeah, seriously. Here we are. And we're back to Jordy Nelson catching long bombs, and we're back to BJ Raji doing dances in the end zone in Soldier Field in a playoff game. Like, same old, it feels like.
Last one, they flexed it into prime time, which was a
Fun game.
phenomenal decision. I know
Yeah.
the Bengals are 2 games below 500. I don't care. One of
Yeah,
the,
they're a really
they're
fun product. Yeah.
yeah, top 5 in the league in most offensive categories. They come out here to LA to play the Chargers at SoFi. Big chance for the Chargers to kind of show what they're all about. And I saw you mention this earlier this week. I don't want to say I forgot about Jesse Minter, but Jim Harbaugh takes up so much of the oxygen around this team. He's kind of flying under the radar, but fourth defense in the last 35 years to allow 20 points or less in their first 9 games. I mean, you really think he's building a case to be a one and done coordinator?
I think so. He's 41. Mike McDuff did a similar thing with Baltimore last year, came from the University of Michigan, went back to Baltimore, serves as 1 year, and then gets the head coaching gig. Minter's got good juice. Like, I posted that saying he's going to be one and done, or at least going to get looks. He will. And Harbaugh brought him over from Michigan, but his history, he was with the Ravens for a long time. From 2017 to 2021, he was with the Ravens as a defensive backs coach. So he's got NFL history. He was at Vanderbilt, then he was at Michigan where he won a national title. I don't know college football well enough, but I said, like, this guy's, and everyone wrote back, well, Connor Stalions this, Connor Stalions that. And I'm like, I'm not getting into sign stealing. That's not my, I just know I watch the NFL. And this guy's defense is playing, and it's not just Bosa, Mack, Derwin James. They've got all these other players that are stepping up, guys you don't know, names that aren't familiar to the household fan. And the Elijah Moldens of the world look like lockdown corners. Like, they're really, really playing well, and no one's seen them because they're the Chargers. And Sunday night will be interesting because it's Herbert and Burrow, but I really think this Chargers defense has been outstanding. Let's see if they can carry their weight as well.
If you don't follow college football, just for anybody listening, I mean, Jesse Minter cut his teeth with the Ravens. Like, he was there. There's overlap there between him and Mike McDonald. Like, there's a lot of the same DNA and the stuff that they do. So I would not question his bona fides. I'm not surprised at all that the Chargers are off to a great start. And yeah, so many unsung players. Tuli Tua, I'm gonna butcher
Say
his
it.
name.
You're
I'm
so good.
sorry.
He wears 45. Say it. What? I can't say it.
Tui Pulo 2.
Yeah.
Tui Pulo 2. Yeah.
Out of USC. Really good
I butchered your name, Tuli. I'm so sorry. But
No, it's hard. They're really
five and a
good.
half sacks in the last 3 games, man. Really impressive. On the other side, quarterbacks get all the they get all the love. I get it, but I'm so happy about what I'm seeing from this Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert relationship. Like, he so clearly needed a quarterback guy and a guy who values him. Like, this stuff we're seeing where Harbaugh's like beating on his chest and telling him he loves him before games. And I don't know if you saw the mic'd up from this week against the Titans, but he's calling him beast mode 1,500 times during the course of the game. I feel like Justin Herbert needed somebody to come in and be like, you are a badass. I am going to help you get where you need to go. Because I'm not convinced he's had that to this point in his career.
No, and it's really it's good because Herbert's not playing hero ball either. If you notice, he's not throwing the ball 50 times in a game. They run the ball with Dobbins really well. Gus Edwards is back in the lineup. They run with him. And the guys that are getting the catches are not Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and these superstar contracts. It's like Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and they're really playing well. It's a fun offense. It's Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh's baby. They run the ball, they protect them, and Harbaugh has gotten the best out of Herbert, and that Herbert hasn't thrown an interception in 7 games. You'll win football games that way.
I just love the juxtaposition of like the Bengals are the closest thing to a Madden offense in the NFL. Just, this
Throw the ball, ton of yards.
Complete reliance on the passing game, explosive plays all up and down the field. And then you've got a Jim Harbaugh team that is the closest thing to like a 1960s, 70s, 80s throwback you're going to see. Styles make fights. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the most entertaining game of the day.
Who do you like in this one? Because it's cool. The NFL flexed into this. They obviously had Colts Jets. They said, we're good. No Super Bowl III, like nostalgia. We're fine. We're done. They go into this game. And I think, objectively speaking, maybe with the exception of Jacksonville and your New Orleans, Cincinnati, LA Chargers might be 31 or 32 or 30 of like fan bases, but the NFL is like, it makes the best game. And I appreciate that.
No, for sure.
They're putting in there. I like the Chargers in this one. I don't think it's a fluke. I think the Chargers are going to win.
I mean, I don't think you're crazy. The Chargers are favored, which I honestly was a little bit surprised to see. So, I mean, that tells you right there that Vegas takes them seriously. We did a segment on the Chargers earlier in the week. I like them. I can't call myself a believer yet, and I hate to do the college football thing where it's like, who have you played? But
yeah,
their wins to this point in the season are a combined 17-40, and
okay.
they are 1-3 against teams that are 500 or better. Their best win is Denver. They lost to Arizona. They played Kansas City tough, but they did lose that game. I just need to see a little bit more from LA, and winning this game would qualify as more because I think this Bengals team is better than their record. But if you're making me pick on Wednesday as we're recording this, I'll go with Joey B and
Okay.
the boys.
I love it. I'll take it.
But it should
best
be a lot of fun.
slate we've had as an NFL audience all season. Healthy quarterbacks in all the big games. Like, I'm here for it.
We're talking about it later in the show, but like we didn't even get to Philly, Washington on Thursday night. Like this is, I don't know if you're as hyper online as I am. Hopefully you're not, but there's like been this undertone of like, oh, the NFL's quality of play has really dropped off. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like this is the wrong week for that conversation.
It feels like the playoffs are already starting. And then like I was looking at the schedule, those Christmas Day games on Netflix, it's Texans, Ravens, and it's Chiefs, Steelers. And I'm like, just get us to those games. And like it's going to be a really cool second half of the season.
And to go back to a previous point, division games galore. I have a feeling the league loaded it up on the back end on purpose, and we are going to benefit from that. So hopefully this is the beginning of a fantastic stretch run. Peter, enjoy the games. I know you will, man. I'll talk to you soon.
You are the man. I appreciate it. Let's go.
All right, let's get to our chat with Greg Olsen. He is on the call in the late window, Fox on Sunday. The Seattle Seahawks going down to take on the San Francisco 49ers. I mentioned the NFC West is wide open. There's just one game between San Francisco in second place in that division and Seattle in last place. The winner is going to be right on Arizona's heels. Maybe not a more competitive division in the NFL this season than the NFC West. And this Niners-Seahawks game promises to be a good one. Let's chat with Greg.
All right, Greg, Seahawks making the return trip down to Santa Clara to play the 49ers. Late window on Fox. I got a stat for you that I want to talk to you about. Through 9 games, the 49ers ranked 25th in YAC. They were 31st in YAC prior to that game against Tampa Bay. They doubled their season average in yards after catch in one game, basically. And I'm curious, is Christian McCaffrey just that amazing of a player that he changes the gravity of how you defend the 49ers, that they can get those routes open again and get guys running after the catch? Or is there something else to the way they kind of cleaned up their scheme coming out of the bye week?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's probably, like anything, there's multiple layers to it. I think when you take a look at the style in which San Francisco had been playing offense up until this past week with McCaffrey's return, and really even elements with McCaffrey still kind of looked like the previous weeks of this season. So against Tampa, more drop back, less under center. All season long, it has been throwing the ball downfield. Purdy leads the league in air yards per attempt. He is pushing the ball downfield, more of a drop back style. That style of offense doesn't as much lead to opportunities to run after catch. Their curl routes, their dig routes. Of course, Pearsall had the big one on the dig where he came out the back end. So obviously that play plus McCaffrey, it does kind of lopside the stats when you talk about run after catch. But just generally speaking, style of play, the opportunities for run after catch just aren't quite the same based on all route concepts. So the longer you throw it, if they're stationary targets, they're curl routes or they're sits, guys are catching the ball typically more with their back to the defense, not on the move. It's more catch tackle, but it's still a 15, 20-yard gain versus some of the drives, the underneath, the shallow cross, check downs to McCaffrey, swing routes out of the backfield, choice routes. Those balls are being caught on the run, on full speed and ability to run after. So I think it's a little bit of play style. I think it's a little bit of just kind of game script, the way their offense has been playing. But then when you factor in McCaffrey, those check downs, McCaffrey, they did not waste any time getting him back in. His check downs in the passing game, I think he had 6 catches, 7 targets. A lot of them are just generally underneath. He had the one swing route, the one wheel route that he took over the top. But he catches the ball at or near the line of scrimmage, and then it's a 7-yard gain. 7 yards are run after catch. So like anytime you use your back as a check down or a design route runner and he catches the ball short, then you factor in the ability to make guys miss and get yards after the catch. That's something they didn't have. As good as Mason is, that's just not really what he was. He was more of a traditional downhill runner. So yeah, I think the Pearsall play and then just McCaffrey in general, adding a lot of shorter passes that gain medium to longer depth after the catch. I think we'll see that yak number. It might not be lead the league like in years past, but I think we'll see that yak number pendulum swing back a little bit more to maybe middle of the road by year's end.
Just in general, I felt like watching Christian against Tampa. It was very much a game where, as it was winding down, I was like, I guess it hasn't been the most amazing day for McCaffrey, but he did have this long layoff. And then I looked at the box score and I was like, the guy's got over 100 all-purpose yards. Like, if that's a quote-unquote quiet day for him, you'll take that every single time. What did you think in general about his first game back?
Yeah, that's why guys like him, and we said it last week with Bijan Robinson, and there's a handful of these guys that the advantage that they have that separate them from all the other more traditional running backs is they don't just have to be relied upon to hand them the ball. You might be in a tough run game matchup. The team might be selling out with extra guys in the box. You might be playing from behind. There's so many factors that dictate how efficient or effective your run game will be, independent of how good the running back is, right? Like some games, it just doesn't work out that the run game's a big part of the offense. The advantage with guys like McCaffrey is even on a day where the run game maybe is not effective or it's not used as much or you're playing from behind or whatever the circumstance that eliminates a real heavy dose of the run game, his touches in the pass game are really no different. Those short checkdowns on 1st and 10 and now it's 2nd and 3, that's just a 7-yard handoff. That's a 7-yard off tackle sweep. Like, because you don't have to judge them on just carries, but more so on touches, there's just so many more ways to get them the ball in space. And then to the earlier conversation, his ability to make guys miss and run after the catch is as good as anybody in the league. So that's where the running back position in the NFL is really trending. However we get them the ball, run, pass, check down, design, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Get them the ball in their hands. What we classify it as, run or pass, in the way these offensive coordinators now are building their scheme, it doesn't really matter.
Very unusual to see business get done in the NFL during a season. So it was at least a slight surprise to me to see Diamador Lenore signed for $92 million on Tuesday. He's been fantastic in the slot for the Niners this year. What have you seen from him that merits this? I think it's kind of an eyebrow raiser when he gets this major extension, and obviously should be a fun matchup with him and Jackson Smith and Jigba this week against Seattle.
Yeah, I think the thing that's always stuck out, and we really started talking a lot about Diamador Lenore last year, and then obviously it carried over. We've only had them one time so far this season, but I think when you talk to the defensive coordinators, you talk to Shanahan, you talk to Sorensen this year or Wilkes last year. The thing that they talk about that I don't know if enough people recognize how difficult it is to be a perimeter outside corner, and then based on base or nickel, also have to come inside and play in the slot.
Mhm.
It is, I think people just assume, oh, it's the third corner. Oh, it's no different. It is a vastly different position playing nickel slot corner than out on the perimeter boundary field, however your defense does it. So I think his ability to come in and defend in the slot, defend on the perimeter, and then the last element is to have the physicality that on first and second down, if we are in nickel and I'm defending a nickel type run, if I'm playing the Falcons or even this week with all the 11 personnel that Seattle's playing, I can have a slot. I can be with only two linebackers in the game and have Lenore as in essence, my third interior linebacker. Granted, he's a nickel, and still be able to fit runs and still be physical and still be able to come downhill and tackle, blitz. There's just not a lot of guys. Usually, some guys can either only play inside or only play outside. So I think San Francisco recognizes what a good multi-skilled player he is, and obviously have rewarded him as such.
It seems so valuable in this day and age if you have a defender who can do two or three things at a high level. I mean, Kyle Hamilton jumps to mind for obvious reasons, but that flexibility to where the opponent's personnel doesn't necessarily dictate how useful you are, it just seems so valuable with the way football is played these days.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more and more of it, especially on the defensive side, but really on the offensive side too. And again, San Francisco has kind of been at the forefront of a lot of that with how they use Deebo Samuel more so before Christian got there, where he was like part running back, part halfback, slot, outside receiver, brought him in, and now with Christian, they kind of do two back stuff and interchange them. So the positionless player in the modern NFL is more and more highly coveted. And I think when you talk about it from the defensive side of the ball, that I don't have to always match personnels. I can play nickel defense, so five defensive backs on the field against two back, double tight end, however you build, but only two receivers on the field on offense. In the old days, it was if you're in base, I'm in base, you're in nickel, I'm in nickel, and I'm just going to match you defensively. Now they are understanding safeties that can play like corners and safeties that can play down linebackers and linebackers that can play coverage and defensive ends that can drop, outside linebackers that can blitz, guys that can overlap levels, either move forward a level or the ability to move back a level. Just brings so much variety, so much, and with the ability of these defensive coordinators to pair all these packages with different stunts, fronts, and pressures, it just opens up a lot more of your options. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. The ability to do a lot at a high level, that's the name of the game these days. And typically it's second and third level players. And Deommodore Lenoir, Witherspoon of the Seahawks is very similar. He's going to be able to play, he's an outside corner. And then when they go nickel, he goes in inside and plays the slot. So again, both these teams this week, Seattle and San Francisco, have a similar guy in their ability to go inside and out. And it's not as easy as people think it is.
One last thing I wanted to ask you about the Niners, and it's decidedly not X's and O's, but I would love your perspective as a longtime player. The scuffle between Debo and the specialists against Tampa. All I can say as somebody that's covered the league for a long time is it's unusual to see. But from your perspective as a player who's spent a lot of time in locker rooms, I mean, how much does that matter in your opinion? Do you think that has the potential to, is it a sign of something? Is it something that could linger, or is it just kind of, hey, guys get frustrated?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to linger. I don't think traditionally those sort of spats, I think they get made a little bit bigger on the outside than they are internally. And I think you heard Shanahan gave his comments. He's like, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal until I went home and saw how many times it was being replayed. And obviously, he said they addressed it in-house with everybody involved. So the one thing I will say is we're not. It's not surprising to see guys get into it in the heat of the battle, and you see guys go after each other or get in arguments. You see coaches do it. You see coaches and players, players on players. It's not really uncommon. It's not really that big of a deal. I think everyone understands the business that you're in. Emotions and intensity and all of that is going to come with the territory. I do think it is a little different to see it involve the specialists. You don't typically on most teams, generally speaking, kicker, long snapper, punter, they're almost like their own separate universe. Like they warm up on their own, they practice, their schedule's different. It's just they're kind of their own entity, and everyone
Right.
just kind of came to the point where you handle your business, and if you don't handle your business, the coaches will find someone else who can kick it better, right? Like that's just kind of how we always approached it. So I think it's less about the spat and the back and getting in each other's faces. It's less about that being a big deal, and um, it's a little more abnormal who it was involved with, the long snapper, the kicker, and a wide receiver. I think when it's all said and done, it's a nothing. It is unusual for those sort of people to interact and really have anything to do with one another, both before, during, or after a game.
To your point, if the Niners' struggles in that category continue for much longer, Debo won't have to worry about it because the
Yeah.
higher people on the chain of command will be worried about it at
What's
that point.
Right. So in a game that has so much gray area, right, it's always hard sometimes to fully evaluate a wide receiver because of their quarterback situation, the pass protection, what style of offense. Like there's always a lot of gray in so many of the positions as we try to like come up with assessments. Is this person good, bad, or somewhere in between? The thing about kicking is it's very black and white, right? How many do you make? How many do you miss? The punter, how far do you punt it? What's your hang time? What's your ability to directional? What's your net return? Long snapper. Like it's a little bit more clear, and therefore the assessments and the will, the decision to make a change or not make a change isn't quite as controversial because if you make all your kicks, you don't get replaced if you start missing. So it's just an easier position sometimes to get like the end result is a little clearer. Um, and I think Moody does deserve a lot of credit though, because after having some struggles, he came back and nailed the game winner, and their cross country flight would have been a lot. It would have been a lot harder for him if he would have missed it.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to think about that. All right, one last question for you on the Seahawks side of this. I don't know if there's a team in the league that's asking more of its quarterback than the Seahawks are asking of Geno Smith right now. And for the most part, I think he's doing a great job, but that like it's such a confusing situation because I can pull up 50 plays of him being awesome, but you still got 10 interceptions to worry about. He's tied for the league lead. The offensive line hasn't done him any favors. I mean, is there anything Seattle can do to make life easier on Geno Smith, or is he just going to have to play that much closer to perfect the rest of the way?
From having these conversations, I always like to look at it like holistically and say, okay, let's just not look at each side of the ball just in a vacuum. And I think when you look at Seattle, because I agree with you, when I watch Geno, I'm not sure this year if there's a more impressive thrower of the football, just purely from the time he decides to rip it, the ability to drive the ball downfield. There's no pace. There's no arc. He's throwing in the tight windows. He threw 3 picks in that overtime loss at home the week before the bye to LA, to the Rams. Obviously, you can't throw picks. You can't throw red zone picks. Like I'm not excusing any of that. But man, some of those throws he fit in there to Jackson Smith and Jigba, the corner out for the touchdown. There's 3, maybe 4 guys in the league that can make those throws. So like there's so much good physically, the arm talent. He's big, strong, he's athletic. But I think when you look at it and saying, okay, why is so much of the game being placed on their shoulders? I think you have to say, okay, if you don't want Geno to have to carry so much of the offense, they need to improve defensively. They've got to keep scoring down. They've got to get off the field. They've got to not let teams run the ball down their throat. And I think if you ask Mike McDonald, he'd say, yeah, our issue right now is Geno's the least of our problems. Like we need to get more consistent on defense. During the bye week, in the last couple of weeks, they've made significant changes now. 2 new linebackers. They trade for Ernest Jones. Their 2 starting backers to start are no longer on the team. 1 traded, 1 cut. So he's not just standing pat with the defense. They know they need to improve. So all of a sudden that defense starts trending a little bit better. They can rely a little bit more on Kenneth Walker. They can rely a little bit on more play action and take some of the load off of Geno. But as things stand now, they have to go into every game and saying our best players are our offensive skill players. I have arguably one of the best trios of wide receivers when healthy. Hopefully DK is back. Between DK, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, they're as talented in the 7-on-7 group as you get. Let's hang our hat on who's our best players on offense, and that also serves us well in the event we need to win a shootout or we need to outscore the opponent. So it doesn't mean it's an easy way to play quarterback. It's certainly challenging. It's certainly a part of why he's thrown 10 picks. But if I'm Mike McDonald and I'm that staff, I'm saying this is what we need to be until further notice. We're not going to win a heavy ground game 17-14. Like,
Right.
that's not our style of winning, barring something changing. So Gino's going to carry the load. He's going to throw the ball 45 times a game. And in the NFL, when you throw it a lot and a lot of drop back pass, unfortunately, not all picks are created equal. Some are on him. Some hit the receiver in the hand and get tipped up. It's a mixed bag, but I don't blame them. I guess my point is I don't blame them for playing the style they're playing because it's the style that's most conducive to them winning.
I don't know if it'll lead to them winning this game, but if history is an indicator, I mean, between Brock Purdy and Geno Smith, we're going to get a dozen wow throws in this game, if I had to guess. So, really looking forward to this one, Greg. Hope you have a great call, man. Appreciate it as always.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
So many big games on Sunday. I wouldn't have been surprised if the Thursday night game was a little bit of a letdown, but that's how exciting week 11 is. Even Thursday night football has big time potential, a huge NFC East matchup. The Washington Commanders going up to Philadelphia, taking on the Eagles. A huge road test for Jayden Daniels in Washington coming off of that loss to Pittsburgh. So it felt like the perfect game for on the road presented by Honda. Dreams are unstoppable. And here with me now to preview a very good Thursday night football game, be Fox Sports reporter Ralph Vacchiano. Ralph, how we doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm so curious and intrigued. I still can't get enough of being excited by Washington football, to be honest with you. It's such a new place for me. You know, I was born a couple years before their last Super Bowl. I was technically alive, but I have no memory of it. And so we're sitting here in week 11, and I looked this up, Ralph. This is the first time Washington has faced Philly while multiple games above 500 since the RG3 season. So, I mean, it's more than a decade since Washington was playing like such a juicy divisional game this late in the season. It's uncharted territory, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how many bad years they've had recently and how difficult it is down there. And, they're certainly in Washington overly excited by this whole thing because they haven't seen that many big games in the NFC East. And really, even when they did, they were mediocre games. There weren't two teams sort of playing at the top of their game. And that's what you've got here. And it's a huge test. Washington has played great. Jayden Daniels has been terrific. There's a lot of reason to believe in this team, but they've yet to win that big game against a really tough opponent. And this is their chance. This is a statement game. We'll find out, are they just an up and coming team or are they ready to win right now?
Yeah, you're right. To this point, I guess the Commanders' selling points right now are a very close loss to Pittsburgh and a very close loss to Baltimore. Beating Philly, particularly on the road, would be very impressive. And at least for the first 5-6 weeks of the season, you could argue this felt like Washington's division. But if the segment says dreams are unstoppable, Philadelphia looks awfully unstoppable since they came out of that bye week, winning these 5 games by an average margin of 16 points. We can get into the offense, but I think everybody gets that. It's been the theme for the Eagles for the last 2 years or so. Now that they're a little bit healthier on that side of the ball, it makes sense that they're rolling. But what have you seen from this defense here on this 5-game winning streak? Because it's not like they're just outscoring opponents. I mean, they've been dominant on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, they really have. What I've seen out of them is a more coherent defense, a defense that, really seems to understand the scheme that they're playing. I think during the first couple of weeks, a lot of us wondered if they were really getting what Vic Fangio was teaching them down there because it just didn't look like there were too many mental mistakes being made, and you don't see that anymore. They've been especially strong in the secondary, more so than they are up front. They have a good pass rush at times. They've had some great games with the pass rush, but it's not really their strength right now. That seems to be more in the back end of the defense. And they're tackling better, which is really something. If you look back to last year, their defense fell apart in the tackling, especially once you got to the linebackers and the cornerbacks and the safeties. just too many mid gains or short gains turned into big gains, and you don't really see that happening anymore. So it does look like it's all coming together. I'd like to see a little bit more consistent pressure from up front for them. Maybe I'm a little spoiled by the fact that they had just a couple of years ago where they were a 70 sack team. I don't think obviously they're going to be that anymore, but overall, they've got some really good players on this defense and they're starting to play like it.
I think that is something I want to watch out for in this game is the Philly pass rush. It hasn't been awful, but you're exactly right. It just hasn't been that historic unit from a few years ago. I did see in this game against Pittsburgh last week for Washington, Jayden Daniels was pressured on 35% of his dropbacks. The Steelers got after him. Not coincidentally, it was his worst passer rating of the season. Unfortunately for Philly, they don't have the horses that Pittsburgh has. I mean, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, all those guys, they're not suiting up for Philly. I am curious to see how Vic Fangio can sort of replicate those results, maybe without just the pure pass rush horses that the Steelers have.
Yeah, and it's not easy against a guy like Jayden Daniels because one of the things that's been really good about him as a rookie is his ability to create plays outside of the pocket. And you can chase him, and that's totally fine, but he can also run. So he didn't do that as well against the Steelers, and obviously he didn't create as many opportunities in the passing game. But there is certainly always that threat. And I think if you're the Eagles, what you need to do is once you get him out of the pocket or once you disrupt his play, make sure that secondary is playing really well. Don't give him the options. He's got some good weapons in the passing game, so don't give him the options to make those big plays. But so you want to keep him at you want to pressure him, you want to try to rattle him, but you have to be careful because sometimes that doesn't always work with a quarterback like him.
I'm not sure if he'll play a role in pressuring Jayden, but I did want to shout out Zach Bond, who I feel like is just now starting to get his flowers for a really impressive start to the season. 87 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, signed from the Saints in the offseason. And Ralph, I love the story that I heard this week that Howie Roseman wanted to sign him as a reserve pass rusher and special teamer because that's kind of what he did for the Saints. Vic Fangio was the guy that was like, no, this guy is going to play inside linebacker for us. And I mean, the guy's having an incredible season. It's been a fun story to follow.
Yeah, he's been fantastic and much needed for them because their linebackers were a weakness at times last year. You also have seen much better play from Nakobe Dean. So it's been it's a lot of strengthening of the linebacker core. That's a big reason when I talked about the tackling being better. Those two are a big reason why the run defense has been better in part because of them. They've found good players. They had a lot of good players, but they're getting them to play up to and exceeding their potential, which is a credit to Vic Fangio and that whole coaching staff.
On the other side of this game, like I said, the Eagles offense, I mean, what do you want me to say? They are loaded, they are healthier than they were, and they look like it. I did have a moment this week while I was prepping for this game, though. My eyebrows shot up when I saw Jalen Hurts can become the 3rd quarterback in NFL history to record a passer rating above 115 in 6 games, 6 straight games. And the other 2 quarterbacks that have done that were 2018 Pat Mahomes and 2011 Aaron Rodgers. So even if it was a little bit of a slow start, it's not hyperbole to say Jalen Hurts is playing at an MVP level right now.
He is. He's playing great. He's doing all of the things that we saw him do during that 2022 season when he was an MVP candidate. He's running the ball smartly, not just scrambling to take off. He's doing it in the right spots. He's creating plays outside the pocket. He's strong inside the pocket as well. And I think, a lot of that obviously goes to Jalen Hurts' ability. He's a terrific quarterback. I do think he's one of the better ones in the league, but I think it also is a testament to the offensive game plan where they are really relying so much right now on their running game, which is always their strength. And it's what they abandoned last year, especially during their losing streak at the end of the season. When they run first, whether it's Saquon Barkley or Jalen Hurts, when they're a threat to run and they rely on that ground game, teams have to overcommit to that and it opens everything else up. And I'm not saying it makes it easy on Jalen Hurts, but it certainly makes it easier and it makes it less likely to make mistakes. It gives them a chance to get the ball to AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and let them actually create big plays even on shorter passes. So right now, it's all working. They figured out a way to get Jalen Hurts playing back at his best again. And really, you got to go back 5 or 6 games now. They've been rolling, and if they keep with that same offensive strategy, that offense is going to be hard to stop.
I hate to oversimplify it. I know it'll be more complicated than this, but you just kind of laid out why I like the Eagles in this game, which is you're going to commit resources to limiting Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts in the running game. And maybe I'm just stuck on how dominant AJ Brown was in this series last year, but the Commanders have already ruled Marshawn Lattimore out for this game. They just traded for him with New Orleans a couple weeks ago. He's not ready to make his debut for Washington. Do the Commanders have guys who can deal with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith? Because I'm not convinced that they do.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that they do either, and I don't think they are. The fact that they traded for Marshawn Lattimore tells you that they knew they needed help in the secondary. I think they knew going into the season it was a bit of a weakness. They've been lucky that it hasn't been exploited too much, but this is exactly the team that can do that because they can't drop a lot of people to help out if they're so worried about stopping Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley up front. So, and also, you can't just double cover AJ Brown. That just opens up things for Devonta Smith. Dallas Goedert is healthy again. They just have so many weapons. That's the vulnerability. And that to me, says that this is probably going to be a game where the Eagles offense is going to be hard to stop. You got to figure they're going to be in the 30s with their scoring, which means that the Commanders' best chance to win this game isn't really slowing down the Eagles. It's keeping up with them in a shootout. And that puts a lot of pressure on Jayden Daniels. And that's where it gets difficult. It was like that with the Baltimore game. If he's got to go pass for pass with Lamar Jackson, run for run with him, maybe he can keep up a little, but in the end, the better quarterback often wins. And I suspect that that's the kind of pressure he's going to be facing in this game, and why I think the Eagles are probably still the class of this division. Although who knows how many more years that's going to last.
Worth noting, too, Brian Robinson Jr. is back for this game, so maybe the Commanders can get their ground game going to a degree to keep the Eagles off the field. There were almost 900 yards of combined offense between the Bengals and Ravens last Thursday. This one's got the potential to be equally as good. Ralph, I'm really hoping it is. Looks awesome on paper. We'll see how it goes. As always, I appreciate talking to you, man.
My pleasure. Enjoy the game.
You as well. Let's get to our Super Six presented by DraftKings. If you don't know the Super Six, you are missing out. Head on over to foxsports.com or the Fox Sports app. Every weekend, you can play the Super Six. Essentially, you play 6 bets, you pick 6 games. Sometimes it's yardage totals, touchdowns. Sometimes it's just picking the result of a game. You make 6 picks. If you hit them all, you can win big. It's a great way to follow along with all of the action on an NFL Sunday. I'm going to do my best to get you started in the right direction with one pick, and I'm going to go with a running back pick. The prop is who will have the most total yards in Week 11. Your choices: Saints running back Alvin Kamara against Cleveland, Niners running back Christian McCaffrey against Seattle, Josh Jacobs of the Packers against Chicago, or Kyron Williams of the Rams against New England. I'm not going to overthink this. Christian McCaffrey is back. He looked plenty healthy to me. He looked plenty productive. I said earlier, it felt like a quiet day against Tampa, and he still had 107 total yards in that win. They're playing Seattle at home, and I can't help but think about the first time the 49ers played the Seahawks. They ran for 228 yards as a team. Jordan Mason had 73 rushing yards, and he got hurt with 9 minutes to play until halftime. He had 73 yards after 18 minutes of gameplay. Niners ran all over the Seahawks. Then on top of that, I went back and double checked. Christian McCaffrey's played 34 games with the 49ers since he got traded there. He's only finished with less than 20 receiving yards in 6 of those. So it's a very safe bet he's going to have a healthy receiving tally on top of the fact that the Niners should be able to run the ball very well. Like I said, I'm not overthinking it. Christian McCaffrey's a beast. The 49ers offense is really good. I think he's going to have a lot of yards against Seattle. I'll take him to finish with the most of these 4 guys. Let's wrap the show up with our hurry up offense. We've covered all of the big matchups of the week, but still 8 more games to talk about, albeit briefly, before we get out of here. So what we're going to do, as usual, my wonderful producer is going to give me 2 minutes on the clock. I'm going to give you something useful, something interesting about the rest of these. Some of them pretty good. We got a couple more good matchups left on this schedule. Some we'll dig deep. We'll find something to talk about. We'll get you on with your day and on to the weekend. All right, clock is there. I see it. Let's start with a good one. Falcons at Broncos, matchup between two playoff hopefuls. Thought this was interesting. Broncos still blitzing at the highest rate in the NFL this year. That's been the case all year. I'm surprised to learn Kirk Cousins is completing just 59% of his throws against the blitz. It's 25th among 35 qualified quarterbacks. Stat worth knowing for this game in Denver. Monday night, Texans at Cowboys. Texans are anticipating Nico Collins to practice this week. I think if he plays, that'll fix the issues with the Texans offense. Cowboys defense allowing the second most points per game in the NFL, 25 plus points in 4 consecutive games. I think Houston will be fine. Jags at Lions. The Jaguars have allowed a passer rating of 100 or more 8 times in 10 games this year. Highest opponent passer rating in the league. Jared Goff, you know what to do. Vikings at Titans. The Vikings lead the league with 20 takeaways. The Titans have given the ball away 17 times. Last week against the Chargers was the first time Tennessee hasn't committed a turnover in a game. I bet you they can't keep that streak going. Raiders at Dolphins. Let's give the Raiders some love. If Brock Bowers continues the pace he's on, he will set the rookie record at any position for receptions, and he is also on pace to set the tight end record all-time for a rookie. Just an incredible year on an otherwise bad team. Rams at Pats. I don't know what this stat means. Do with it what you will, but the Rams have won 5 straight games on a short week. They played on Monday night, so this is a short week. Browns at Saints. Alvin Kamara needs just 1 receiving touchdown to become the 4th player in league history with 50 rushing touchdowns and 25 receiving. The other 3 are Lenny Moore, Marshall Faulk, and Christian McCaffrey, so pretty good company if Kamara can do it. Colts at Jets. Anthony Richardson's back. I don't know if that leads to points because the Jets have yet to have a 25-point game all year, and the Colts haven't scored more than 20 in 6 weeks. Not a lot of offense expected at MetLife. We'll see what happens there. Maybe they can break out of it. Good on Anthony Richardson for getting himself back into the lineup. Glad the Colts did that little experiment. All right. That does it for our show. That does it for the Week 11 preview. So much to look forward to starting tonight and on into Sunday. We will be back on the other side of the weekend like we always are. We'll be recapping all things Week 11. We'll have all the news, all the reaction, everything you need to know after so many big games that'll change the league landscape. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, go find us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get them, wherever you find your pods, you can find us there. We will be in your feed on Monday morning, breaking down everything that happened in a crazy Week 11. I'm already so excited. 7 hours of commercial-free football. That's what they say, right? More than that when you include Thursday and even Monday. Looking forward to that as well. Suffice to say, I'm pumped. I hope you are too. I will talk to y'all on Monday. I appreciate it.